if our children start to be more introverted when we know they're extroverted kids, it's that change of behavior that we want to be aware of. Ask a statement, sorry, without a question. Sometimes saying to our children, what's wrong? And that actually puts them off more, but encouraging dialogue and looking at saying, help me understand what's happening for you this week at school. And kids of all ages can tell us that. Some will do it through art, some will do it through verbally, and some will do it through behavior. They might be aggressive one afternoon and you go, where did that come from? You know? And so it's just trying to draw out a really healthy dialogue and be aware of behavior change in our own kids.
Welcome to the Company of Dads podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sullivan. We're focused on lead dads, working moms, and how small changes at home or work can have a big impact on their lives. Each episode promises to deliver actionable advice on some area of concern at home or at work. Short, direct, again, actionable. 5 questions, 5 answers. Today, we're talking to Ben Sacco, author of Disruption in Schools. Understand Me Before You Mark Me. The book is about responding to daily realities in classrooms around how children behave. Ben is a managing director of Education Economy, which works with schools and education systems to create the conditions for quality teaching, engaged learning, and whole school well-being. Here's some trivia. A couple decades ago, Ben was on Australian Idol. Today, in addition to his work in education, he's the father of 2 kids, 5 and 7, and lives in Melbourne, Australia. Welcome, Ben, to the Company of Dads podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Paul. Got to love a good trivia question, right?
You want to sing something? Before I ask you question 1, is that you want to you don't have to break into song, but you can if you want.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I reckon let's see how we go.
All right, fair enough. Maybe you'll sing the outro at the end. People can, if they listen to the end, maybe there'll be a little song there.
Done.
As promised, 5 questions, 5 answers, and I just love what you're doing. Because I've got 3 kids in, what we call in the States elementary, middle, and high school. So 3 different parts of their educational journey. And, this year for all 3 of them is going amazing, but that's not always been the case. It's just not natural. So, question 1 is really, what do parents need to know about how disruption is handled in schools that they don't know?
It's one of those things actually that I want to put straight out there that I'm still learning as well as a dad and an education professional. And I'm looking at the way in which disruption can be a range of things. It can be technology and the advancements and the way that society is changing, but also how we are responding to pressures in our classrooms as teachers and how we're engaging with parents. And as a parent and an education professional, how even I engage with my own kids' school, and give space to teachers to do their work, but as a parent, kind of learn the process that the school is going through to educate my child. And so it's really, disruption is really looking at, I try and term it as adversity. What adversity is happening in someone's life that might have the potential to derail their success in their day or their week. So as parents, we're always on the lookout for what's going to stop a smooth, fun, exciting day for our young people and our children. And I always come back to curiosity. How do we create days full of curiosity for our kids? When they ask why at the, under the 10 years of age, they ask why a lot. How are we responding to that and not shutting them down? And when they're teenagers, how we kind of engage in their interests at a point where we're also showing them their interests might lead to pathways for future careers or just general life happiness. So I play in that space around disruption, and not always disruption being a bad thing either.
Yeah, and so let's drill down on that before I get to question 2. When you think of disruption, what exactly does it mean? Because you can think of, a classroom full of 5-year-olds, and it can be, very exuberant, and everyone is very happy, but perhaps there's disruption there. And then you can think of a classroom full of 15, 16-year-olds, and what disruption might look like would be very different. So when is disruption something that you would identify that parents might need to be concerned about in terms of how teachers manage it?
Yeah, I would say when disruption looks like it's stopping the learning for their children in a classroom,
Yeah.
but not bringing with that the judgment that it's because of another human being's behavior. By that I mean we tend to say that classroom behavior and disruption through behavior is on the rise. There's a lot of research globally showing different parts of the world where disruption, as it's termed, misbehavior,
Yeah.
is stopping the learning from happening. What I look at, whether it's in the book or in my advocacy, is disruption is really looking at what if we as parents are not setting up the right conditions prior to the kids going to school. So they're already disrupted heading into the classroom. So what can we do differently to create a transition in the morning to school so that kids feel like school is a protective place for them and it's an exciting, curious learning environment for them? But then as teachers, what are the things that teachers might need to reframe around how they create learning environments so that young people feel psychologically safe and feel excited about the learning that's going to happen because they've got visibility on that. It's sometimes for me, it's about looking at disruption can be that a school needs to stop what they're doing because of something happening outside the school, but it actually is a good disruption. Kids move to a safe area if there's a threat to something happening in the piece happening in the classroom. It doesn't always have to be a negative connotation to the word though. So I look at it from that perspective. To be honest, Paul.
Yeah, that's great. So question two, we try to get as specific as we can to sort of give people good takeaways. And I have three kids, and my youngest
Mm.
has dyslexia and some other learning challenges. And when she came home from kindergarten, she said it's boring. And of course, no kid really says kindergarten is boring because it's joyful. And we'd already had some other signs, in her young life, and we knew that um, she has struggles. So boring for her was code that she didn't even understand what it was be like to be an emerging reader. So that was obvious for us, but we sort of knew it was coming down the highway. When you think of other parents who don't have those signals going in, what are the signs for parents that things are not going well in school and it's not something their children can necessarily control? These are not, bad
Yeah.
kids. These are kids who are in a situation, but, fast forward to teenagers, they come home and you ask them how school is and they say good. And so what are those signs that parents look for beyond, a child who lacks the ability to really
Yeah.
adequately express what they're feeling?
Yeah, behavior is a form of communication. So,
Yeah.
young people that say school was good, we need to try and elaborate. What is it about school that made you feel? That's a hard one as a parent. I
Lunch,
haven't mastered that.
lunch and recess. That's the answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But when just coming back to your point too, when a child says to the parent, "I'm bored," or the class that this is not, I'm not excited about school, or like those things for me as a parent and an education professional, that I look for, do they feel like there's a sense of belonging? Do they feel isolated?
Mm.
Do they have friendship groups that are actually healthy? And so the signs are looking for if a young person or a child is if our children start to be more introverted when we know they're extroverted kids. It's that change of behavior that we want to be aware of. Ask a statement, sorry, without a question. Sometimes saying to our children, what's wrong? And that actually puts them off more, but encouraging dialogue and looking at saying, help me understand what's happening for you this week at school. And kids of all ages can tell us that. Some will do it through art, some will do it through verbally, and some will do it through behavior. They might be aggressive one afternoon and you go, where did that come from? And so it's just trying to draw out a really healthy dialogue and be aware of behavior change in our own kids. And I do
Yeah.
always say, Paul, we know our kids' behavior as parents much more deeply than an education setting would. They see different behaviors. They see kids trying to fit into a classroom environment. We see our kids just in their sort of authentic self at home, and I think that there's a real role for us as parents to back our gut and our instinct around behavior change that we notice.
When parents miss these signals, they blame themselves and they blame themselves years later.
Mm.
But are there common signals or common signs that parents should be on the lookout for that would signal that perhaps something is awry?
Really tricky, isn't it? The
Yeah.
common ones would be around shutdown behavior. if we know that our child is talkative and they're refusing to engage with us over a period of time, it might be a full day or a couple of days where we're seeing isolated behavior, we need to trust ourselves and say, that's not like little John. That's not like, little Sue. We want to see the eating behaviors might change. For adolescents, the risky behaviors might increase. All of a sudden, there's late night want to be going out. There might be dabbling in things, finding things around the house that are just misplaced. Forgetfulness in young people is often a sign that they're dealing with something complex in the mind. We call that cognitive load. Some that deal with complex trauma might be look irritable. Bullying cases, we often see changes of behavior in terms of erratic behavior, quick to defend and protect for self sort of preservation. So I think it's really hard to say, even with someone with my knowledge, I can predict when my child is hurting and I can
Mhm.
help, because I will miss it too. I often advocate for us being a bit more human and kind and understanding that we're not always gonna get it. That's why there's initiatives like Are You OK Day to kind of highlight that we need to sort of just be present where we can and do the best job we think we're doing. But got to be careful we're not terribly hard on ourselves when we miss something that
Yeah.
comes out later. Yeah.
So, question 3, for society to function, we need to rely on institutions doing their jobs. We need to trust that doctors are well trained. We need to trust that police and firemen are acting in our best interest. We need to trust that educators have our children's best interest at heart, as much as they can. But the reality is sometimes there is that conflict with the school. So, how do you advise parents to deal with schools when those teachers in the schools are perhaps not handling their children's disruptive behavior appropriately?
Yeah. Deep breathing. um,
There's only
you
so
know,
much box breathing we can do. Okay.
That's right. That's right. But we're all human, and so the way I would always suggest to parents, even when I was in school roles myself, would be to approach with the facts of what's happening and
Mm.
try and minimise the heavy hitting emotion that can take away from the
So, like,
facts. Yeah.
you suck. My kid says you suck. What do you
Yeah,
got? Come on.
to be honest, I'm an open book when I used to lead. I'd rather a parent tell me I'm really not happy with you. They'll use different language, sometimes colourful.
Yeah.
They can be disrespectful, but I understand the passion. I'm reading that they're passionate. I'm not accepting that treatment. No one deserves to be
Right.
abused in their profession. But when we separate the emotion of being a human and an advocate for our children.
Not the what they're saying, but the why they're saying it.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's what I wanted to come to. I really believe that we lack that. Like globally, the research continues to talk about being parents really connecting with their kids, not always being friends, being friendly, but being a real guide and steward of the pathway for kids, values, systems, beliefs, developing all these wonderful things. But when we have disagreements, it becomes very clear that maybe a biological need, we go at each other, right? The strongest, the toughest will win, but the relationship suffers, ruptures, fractures. So who really wins in that? And I sort of look at it from the point of view of let's just build a relationship that is strong and founded on this relationship where we both care about each other and your child. And then when stuff doesn't go well, let's raise it and talk about it and work the problem, not harbor it and hold on to it. And the thing that schools do incorrectly, I think, is they say parents will take care of it, and then parents don't get that visibility of what's really been taken care of. They're left in the dark a little bit, and it's not always intentional by a school, busy places, but we can do better. Parents want to know that their child is being looked after, so we have to give them that assurance. As much as we give them an assurance, curriculum will be delivered, which we tend to do that more than we do the assurance around how we're going to look after their child with tangible,
Yeah.
practical things, not just words on a letter that says we're looking into it.
Right, and it's also more easier or easier sometimes to say like, "Look, the test scores are great, and the test scores show that Bob and Sally are learning at a very high level," but that doesn't get to the social emotional
Yeah,
core.
right,
Is that
right.
something that perhaps or sometimes we're asking too much of schools?
No, look, I'm a big fan of saying we actually need to be realistic with what
Mm.
we're expecting. We talk a lot in education. We're going to go above and beyond. In fact, we talk in human services professions, right? We want to go above and beyond to help those that we're serving. I don't actually think we can really go above and beyond. I think we should be more realistic. We have because we fail, we set
Like
apart.
below and underneath instead of above
Well,
and
well,
beyond. We're gonna go below and underneath. We're gonna
it's a great conversation. Just realistic. Let's just set realistic approaches to help the human being we're helping, and measure that, succeed in that, and move forward. I think that, to your point, we often report on academics, but then we leave out the personable stuff, like, the charisma of your child, or the compassion that I see in your child helping new students know where the toilets are, or just that we don't report on that enough. If in some sectors in parts of the world at all, we're very literacy numeracy driven. I totally
yeah.
get it. I back that. But we also need to be human centered and person driven, especially when we know these are things that mean humanity and humankind. Really, it feeds on compassion and empathy and connection. Be great to have a little report card that says, how well does your child show compassion and empathy?
Yeah.
And parents would love that. Wow, my child. You know. So I'm a big advocate of getting the balance right. Yeah,
Love it. Question four, all kids act out, all adults, act
yeah,
out. We're inbounds and out of bounds. We're trying to figure out who we are.
yeah.
But, parent, teachers, siblings, friends, they're going to react.
Mm,
How do you help people understand what's really happening to a child who is
mm.
acting out and to respond in a better way?
Yeah, we have to spend time trying to understand what's driving or motivating the individual to behave a certain way. And often that means we should talk less as parents, and we should let young people give them the time to then talk. So a quick example is, I could be in a school doing some coaching with a teacher, and they'll ask two or three questions with no pause in between. And they want the same information. It might be, for example, tell me why you did that. And then they say, why did you do that? I don't hear anything. What's the reason? And I'm sitting there going, this young kid,
Right.
7-year-old Sue, is trying to process three questions, not realizing developmentally they're all asking the same thing. And here's the cool thing: when you help parents and teachers learn some basics around body and brain science, we realize that sometimes young kids, under a lot of us actually, under pressure, and this will be a great area that I'm sure you can talk to, but
Yeah.
we operate a certain way under pressure. We kick into a response mode to survive the threat that we perceive. And if you're being questioned as a young person, it's easy to go, I don't know, and shrug the shoulders. And so less talking of us, and the right kind of statement pieces for kids, like, help me understand why you might have done that. That doesn't mean we don't then look at consequences. Society needs consequences, but it's an education piece. This is why you're going to need to stay in at lunchtime, and show us that you want to contribute to the classroom environment. Or this is why you're not getting ice cream before dinner, or why TV is banned for the week. There has to be an explanation piece with that. But
Right.
let's draw out the why first from kids. Um,
I love
yeah,
that. There's so many great stories about, parents harmlessly overreact. And this is,
yeah,
and I always love the story where, I was a business journalist before starting the company Dads, and almost apocryphal story of the child asks the parent, where does money come from, and the parent goes into this sort of disquisition as to where money comes from and all this,
yeah,
but then the child says, well, no, 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 where does money come from? And they're pointing to the bank machine, they're pointing to the ATM, and they want to know, like, how the money physically gets in the ATM that comes out.
yeah.
And sometimes I love your response, because we're too quick to judge, we're too quick to answer, or in your example, we're going to ask those three questions,
Mm.
boom, 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 as opposed to sitting back and trying to understand, what were you
Yeah.
thinking at the time.
But there's a large sort of body of work here around, if we take time to understand how beneficial that is. And others would say we're giving in to the kids. We're always giving in to this generation. And I'm following a lot of work around Generation Beta, and this next generation that'll, in the next 5 years, they'll start their first year of schooling. They're going to be so immersed in the way technology is in the world. A phone is like a flower in the dirt. It exists. It's around
Right.
them. And I look at it and say, what we're trying to do is we're trying to lean into future generations. We're not giving in. We're still in control, but not in an authority sort of a way of being authority driven. We're in control around giving them conditions to be curious, to explore, to ask questions, to fail. If I put my daughter the other day, she came. Here's a fun one, right? My
Yeah.
daughter the other day said, "Daddy, the drain is blocked in the bathroom." And so in I go. And what's the first thing that someone's going to say at age 7 when you say, "How did the drain get blocked?" She said, "I don't know." But the smile and the body language tells me, oh, I think she does know. So I said, what would it be? And she says, "Oh, maybe paper got in there." And I thought,
Maybe. I love the maybe.
maybe paper
Maybe.
from the
Right.
printer downstairs got into the upstairs toilet drain. Anyway, as it turned out, paper did get in there, not toilet paper, which we know is designed, recyclable toilet paper sort of, right,
Yeah.
breaks apart. When I opened it up and showed her, I said to her, I don't know who did this, but it'd be good to know so we can tell them and help them understand what the impact would be. Anyway, she says to me, "Dad, do you know what? I did that. And I didn't realize, Dad." She's 7, right? And she says, "If I did that again, would it block the drain again?" And I said, "Yes." And we had this great conversation to when her little sister walks in, and she then says, "Don't you put paper down. I've learned that it blocks." And I thought, wow, now she's teaching, right? So she's taken an opportunity where she's felt supported to learn the process of what happens. There's no need to ban her from a bathroom, when she needs to wash her face or brush her teeth. But what we're trying to do is create the citizen thinking. If I do something, what's the impact on me and others? And there's no consequence in that situation. That's a great learning opportunity, and she's better for it. The drain has not been blocked since,
But
and
Ben,
yeah,
what kind of adult are you raising there? She should have blamed
yep,
her little sister. That is the way out of this. What is this?
yes,
You're creating an
yes. So,
adult who accepts responsibility and understands her actions?
well, actually,
What?
in one case, I might fail in 10 others. All right, we're parents. We're learning as we go. We won't always get it right. But you know what? Yeah, it's really exciting, isn't it? To your point, it's a win for parents. It's a win for dads giving it a go. The easy thing is for even me and my upbringing, right? And the ideas in society is to just finger point, tell off, ban them from something.
Right.
I've just had too good of a career where I've seen so many different ways in human services professions, in teaching and community service organisations, where actually we can get the same outcome without putting young people in a harmful situation. Because compliant kids, through approaches that are punitive and harmful to their development, that's only creating obedience through harsh
Right.
compliance. I want to create really aware young people in my own 2 children who contribute to society, and think about their actions, and how it's going to impact those around them, not just themselves. I'm working on it. It'll take a while.
I love it. Ben, question 5,
Mm,
I don't know if I'm sure this concept is over there in Australia, but in America we talk a lot about helicopter parents, who
yeah.
swoop in. We talk about snowplow parents who, push everything out of their way. But we're talking about, kids with disruptive behaviors, kids who may need some help, they may need some guidance, they may need some explanation. What's a
Mm,
better way to help kids who are struggling in school to really help them
yeah.
and not be those snowplow parents who try to remove all
Yeah.
the obstacles in their path?
Yeah, I would say that what we don't do well, but to a degree, I think this is a really good thing to think about, is how we actually work better together. Partnerships between school and parents, and have our behind closed door conversations when we want to disagree, because young people are processing, mum and dad are fighting for me, and then they're processing, that means I can do stuff, and they're always going to defend it. And sometimes I think it's helpful when schools and parents meet separately and kind of nut out what's actually going on here and how do we actually come together in this. We operate in silos a lot, us against you. To be honest, I think society in general, watching the last sort of decade in different countries, but Australia in particular, we have great division in certain areas of our thoughts, how we want to run education, how we want to parent, how politicians should operate. And I would love us to come together more and actually say, look, here's a list of the things that we're all battling. What are the common ground? What are the common things we want to do differently and do it together? And one of the easiest things is to actually build relationships from the start, parents and schools working better together. But I totally understand, and this is the part that I think is controversial. I'm a dad, and I'll go and advocate for my child, but I'm also an educationalist, so I understand what it's like to get that parent come
Sure.
at me. Yeah, so I'm still learning how to be a dad, and a husband, as well as a person in education who advocates. And even I get it wrong. I go sometimes a little bit too passionate. I think just coming back down to what are we doing this for, and it's for a future for our children. And separate the strong emotion where we can, and look at the facts. Let's get to work on the problem and do this.
Love it. Ben Sacco, author of Disruption in Schools, Understand Me Before You Mark Me, and the managing director of Education Economy. Thank you for being my guest today on the Company of Dads podcast.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's been great.
And one last chance. Do you want to sing us out? Do you want to go back to that Australian Idol roots and sing us out?
I probably want to allow people to be curious and go searching.
Even better. Thank you, Ben, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Company of Dads podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in week after week. Just want to use this moment here to thank the people who make it possible. Number one, of course, Helder Mira, who is our podcast editor. We also have Skip Cherryholmes, who many of you know from the Lead Dad Diaries. He's taken over our social media. Terry Brennan is helping us with our audience development, and Emily Servin is there each and every day helping with the web development. I can't do any of this without an amazing board of advisors. So I just want to say thank you to all of you who help, and I want to say thank you to everyone who listens, and hopefully you'll tune in again next week. Thanks so much.